Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is Jessie Jones. Jazz is alive in South Florida, and Jessie Jones Jr. is here to prove it. The Miami native is a saxophonist extraordinaire and continues to be on the forefront of a burgeoning jazz renaissance in South Florida. I want to welcome to our show this great musician, Jessie Jones Jr.
Hello, Susan.
Well, it's so great to have you on my show. You know, I mentioned your brother to you just before we started the show, and you have a very extraordinary family. I mean, your brother is Melton Mustafa, who is one great trumpet player of our time. How did this happen that the two of you became musicians? Because not every family has two extraordinary musicians.
Well, it was this thing, I believe. I started out being a musician first in elementary school. That's the first started playing, and then later on I got my brother to get into the music field.
Yeah, and so now, Jessie, you have such a positive attitude and a dynamic stage presence. Where did that come from? Your family? I mean, how did that happen? Because not everybody who is a musician, because it's so darn hard, can have a positive attitude.
Well, that I can definitely say that came down from our parents. We had very, very wonderful and lovable parents, and that's what happened. They come down from our parents, and we went through all. Well, it was 2 boys and 3 girls. And we all, it's the same.
Yeah, so were your parents musicians as well, or was there anybody in your family who gave you the inspiration to do what you do?
Well, my mother played piano in the church, and my dad sang in the choir.
And so as a result of that, it gave you the inspiration that I'm talking about. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So now let's learn a little bit about you. Tell our audience, who is Jessie Jones? Jessie
Jones is now Jessie Jones is a jazz musician, a father of 4, married to a wonderful young lady, Thelma Jones. I'm a musician, a jazz musician, or put it this way, I am a musician that likes to travel and likes to converse with the people, to spread the gospel of jazz and music to my audience.
Now, Jessie, jazz is not everything that is not the music that everyone likes to listen to. Young people today, they like rap and they like hip hop and they like rock, hard rock, but jazz, well, I don't know. So tell me a little bit about the people who don't know about jazz. What is jazz? Talk about jazz.
Well, actually, jazz is a communication from the soul, like any other music. But it's just to say we live in the United States, but we are in Florida. Many people think that jazz is a type of music. I get this a lot. Jazz puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
But they don't. But we have to educate the younger people to let them know that jazz in the beginning, jazz was really dance music. Take you back the Duke Ellingtons back in the days, and during that time it evolved where now it has so many different types of jazz. Now you have the smooth jazz, you have the rock jazz, you have all this other type of jazz, and it really confuses a lot of young people.
Why does it confuse them?
That's a good question. It's just like trying to get a person to learn several different languages.
So you equate this with language. It's learning a language. Is that what you're telling our audience about?
Yes, they're learning a specific type of language. You have to, in order to I would say, to get a grasp of good jazz, you really have to go back and listen to the masters, from the old school, and see where they come from, their heart. But there's a message there from the old school.
What's the message?
The message is jazz is alive and will always be alive, and it comes directly from the heart. Improvisation, it's a language that we converse to our audience and people around the world.
Mm-hmm. And now it's very interesting because I know that jazz in Europe during the turn of the century and later even, a lot of the African Americans went to Europe to play because in this country they had a tough time. And so is it the case that people around the world have more appreciation for jazz, or would you say Americans also are up there with that appreciation?
Well, as far as my experience in listening and hearing other jazz musicians, over there in Europe, they support jazz more. Mm-hmm. During a time a while back, it was like in some country was forbidden. People were forbidden to listen to jazz.
Really?
As the years went by, I imagine they came to grips with themselves and say, "Wow, look at what we're missing."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I believe that over there they support jazz more than here.
Jesse, can you give us a little information about jazz in terms of the history of it? Can you explain how that all happened? Where did it come from? Was it from just some improvisation of somebody just strumming on a guitar or playing the drums or something of that sort? But tell our audience a little bit about the history of jazz.
Well, jazz started, I don't believe anybody really knows exactly the right degree or spot that jazz started at. You can even go back to the drummings of Africa up through the 18th century, where you had as far as the people of color started the blues, coming up through Louis Armstrong. You got your jazz from Kansas City, Chicago, where it's an interpretation of one conversing with each other, from have a conversation with each other through their instruments.
Through their instruments. So it's very interesting you mention that, because when I go to jazz shows, I notice something very unusual. I see that the jazz artists are looking at one another and trying to decide, or giving each other the kind of okay to jump in and play. And that's a kind of improvisation. And is that how you converse in jazz? You look at one another in the face, in the eyes, you kind of give them a little wink and say, okay, it's your turn.
Well, are you talking about the musicians themselves?
I'm talking about the musicians, and I'm talking about how they play. Because when I watch them, I see they're giving each other, usually like the Jesse Jones Juniors of this society. They, you kind of give, if you're the leader, you kind of look in somebody's eyes, and all of a sudden they jump in.
Well, that's not really the case. The case, it's a spiritual thing that's going on between all the musicians on the stage. They feel each other. They're communicating each other. I don't, per se, you don't have to look at each other and say, okay, it's your turn, because it's a spiritual thing. We know what is happening, and many times we look at each other and say, yeah, I feel it, brother. Or I feel it, sister. Without a wink, or just a smile. Say, yeah.
Wow. So it's a language, and it's a universal language, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And also that communication is also taken to the audience, because when you when you're playing a tune and the audience are listening, and you see them bopping their heads or patting their foot or smiling or waving their hands or snapping their fingers, that's the conversation.
Yeah, that's right. Very interesting. Now, I just interviewed a young man. He was 19 years old, and he's a musician. And I asked him, I said, it's very unusual for a 19-year-old to play like you, because, boy, was he good. And he said the same thing as you. He said it's kind of a feeling. It's a kind of response that you just want to give to the audience of your love for the music and your love for your instrument. Which is your instrument, by the way?
Alto sax, flute, soprano. Also singing scat also.
You scat? Ah. Now, Jessie, would you mind if I kind of put you on the spot and ask you, could you just do, I know we didn't talk about this, but I would love the audience to know about scat. So can you give us a little, just a tiny example of scat? And then let's talk about it for a moment, because I think it's a really fascinating language of its own. So give us just a little piece.
All right, Susan. All right, you take something like you're in the tune. You say something like that.
Oh, that's sensational. Okay, so now explain to our audience how you did that, because I thought it was an easy thing to do when I tried it, and absolutely not easy. So what is scat?
Really, scatting is really singing the notes that are on a horn.
Oh.
In other words, a lot of times musicians will tell others that if you can scat it, you can play it, or if you can play it, you should be able to scat it or sing it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. But there are some musicians like you who have that ability, but not everybody can do scat. It's hard.
Well, it's I don't know. I would say, as far as me myself, I got into scat by singing a melody and playing it, playing a scale, and then singing the scale or scatting the scale. Say, for instance, but there's many ways of pronouncing the notes. If you're playing a C scale, da 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 da, you can also say ba 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 ba, or do 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 do, or you can say da dee da dee da dee da dee da.
Oh wow, yeah. So it's sounds, and is your brain? Now let's talk about your brain for a minute, because there must be something about
You mean my brain?
Yes, I want to talk about your brain, because your brain is able to do to translate sounds. It must be. I think it's. I think this kind of ability to do what you do, not only the scat, but playing an instrument and so on, is something in your brain. I want to know about that, because I once went to an amazing conference, which was Music and the Brain, and what it said is that what the people at the conference talked about is how the brain has influence on being able to be creative, be right-brained or left-brained, and so is to your knowledge, is your brain working a little different? What's going on in there?
I don't know. I can't really explain that to you, but I can't. I've read things, wrote some things that says that on a lighter note, musicians are different, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's true. Now, let's kind of change gears, because I'm putting you on the spot too much, I think. But anyway, you've performed music with many amazing other musicians, such as Joe Williams, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Clark Terry, and the list just goes on and on. So tell our audience all about what it was like to play with Dr. Lonnie Smith, Monty Alexander, and the ones I mentioned.
Oh, it's great. It's for me, it's the best high you could ever have. Performing with the guys like Dr. Lonnie Smith was wow. All I can say is wow. And right today we're still friends. And in fact, he's doing a concert down here pretty soon.
Oh.
Well, I remember, years ago, I did a concert with Clark Terry. And that was, as a matter of fact, it was at the Miami's the zoo down South Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a great time. That was one of the first time I played with a top jazz musician.
What makes them great?
Also did scatting together, and it was really nice.
Mm-hmm. And so what makes them great?
The message that they're giving, their musicianship, their loyalty.
So, explain that, their loyalty. What does that mean?
Well, when we're talking about loyalty, they're sticking to their guns. In other words, they're here for great conversations in jazz, speaking to people, and letting them know that music is a part of their life and can be a part of your life. Without music, there's nothing. I mean, music is all over. Music has to do with just about everything in the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, it's very interesting that you talk about that, because I remember seeing a documentary where it was the agent for the Beatles, and what he did was he sat in he went to the jungle, believe it or not, and he listened to the sounds of the jungle, the sounds of the water, the sounds of the leaves just kind of brushing against each other, the sounds of the little birds and various other animals, and he translated that into music. And he said that's where music comes from. It comes from our nature, from our thoughts in our mind. And I'm just wondering if that is how you feel too, that you kind of feel the sunshine, you feel the wind in your hair and things of that nature. Is that true?
I do the same thing now. I can be outside or in the house and hear something from the dryer. And I said, "Oh man, that's a nice little thing right there. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, chika, boom, chika, boom, chika. Well, not to say that's how my dryer sounds.
Right.
But even outside, the different sound that you hear, you automatically, if you think about it, you can compose a tune to certain sounds.
Now, you just brought something up that's very interesting as well, and that is composing. Now, I want you to tell the audience about how you compose music and how you do it. I mean, because when do you sit down and just something comes to your mind? How does that work?
Well, there are many, many, many different ways in composing music. Some people they sit down and thoughts come to them, or they can be writing. Like you said, listening to some sounds from the earth or from the air, and a melody come to their mind, or it could be something that brings back a memory that sparks a melody in your mind. You write it down, that type of thing. Many, many ways. Different musicians have different ways of putting the music on paper.
Yeah, that sounds.
Or nowadays on the computer.
Mm-hmm. And so when you're putting your music on paper, do you think that it's just going to you're just trying it out, or are you very serious and this is what you're going to produce? And how long does it take you to do that?
Well, it could take a day. It could take months. It could take a year.
Really?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and when you spend that time, I mean, how does it make you feel? Do you feel like, oh my God, I have so much to accomplish, so much to produce, or do you just feel relaxed? I mean, because music is relaxing.
once you sit down at the with a pencil and paper, manuscript paper, or more now to the computer, and you're writing music, it's like, wow, oh, this will fit. Oh yeah, this is great. And you get that feeling, say, wow, this is coming together here. Mm-hmm. It's a happy feeling,
Yeah.
When you're composing something, because you're creating something, and you want it to be good. So your mind is saying, wow, yes, take this out. Yeah, put this in. Yeah, boom, boom, boom,
Mm-hmm. Now, are you doing anything as we speak in terms of a new piece, and what's in store for you?
Well, I just finished writing music for my next CD. So I am not not recording. I'm not writing anything right at this moment. Right now, I just finished writing a whole bunch of tunes that I would like to have on my next CD. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm at ease and happy and happy to, when the time comes, to put it down on wax.
Yeah, and if you had a chance to do something right now, for example, write some music for a movie or for a TV show, would you want to do that?
Well, yes, I would.
So have you been pursuing that?
No, I haven't. Because all of my writing has been mostly on small band, like the quartet, quintet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, when you get into that type of thing, that's more my brother's side.
Yes, yes. And do you have any heroes in your world?
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, my first hero is God. My second hero is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. My third hero is the Holy Spirit. Everything else comes after that.
Yeah. So you're a religious man.
Yes, I am.
I see. Now, also, tell us a little bit about your family, because you mentioned your wife, Thelma, and it sounds like she's an incredible woman who inspires you and keeps your heart feeling you feel the patter of your heart when you're with her. Isn't that the case?
All the above.
That's wonderful. So, if you were to tell our audience about something that you wish for in the future, why don't you do it now? And I'd love you to tell our audience how they can find you and what you're doing, and what's next for you.
Okay. Well, actually, if you want to find out more about me, you can always go to my website, which is JesseJonesJr.music.com. That's JesseJonesJr@yahoo.com.
And are you going to play around the country or around the world? Anything coming up that you want to tell us about?
Well, last week I just come back from a concert tour of Siberia. Then I have other things that I'm doing in the States between now and December, which in December I'll be doing a festival in Italy with a great artist, vocalist out of New York by the name of Alan Harris.
How exciting. I mean, what a life you lead.
Well, I love traveling and entertaining people.
I want to just go back to Siberia. Now, no one would think, at least I don't, that in Siberia they want jazz. First of all, what is Siberia like, and what was the audience like in Siberia?
Well, it's a wonderful place, I tell you, and the people there are so wonderful. They're very kind. They really support jazz. I've been going over to Siberia off and on since 1999.
Whoa!
Not saying, because I've been to Russia many times, all over Russia. But speaking now of Siberia, everywhere I perform in Siberia is standing room only.
Really?
Standing room only. If it's outside or indoors, it's the same.
It's a universal language, isn't it? Because most of the people, they don't speak English, do they?
Oh, I'm telling you, definitely.
Wow. And they and the people in Siberia and the places you're talking about overseas, do they have the same feeling for jazz?
Yes, they have the same feeling, but it's played a little bit lesser.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling, but I mean playing wise.
Right.
But nowadays, you can you can go to anywhere in Europe and listen to a group, and you would know where they were from, because nowadays they're right on it.
I understand.
Like the guys that I play, and when I go over to Russia or Siberia or Italy, they're right on it, as though they were born with it. Which some of them are. A lot of them are. And they know exactly where the 2 and the 4 is. And they got rhythm. And they got soul.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is something else that I want to understand about. You say they have rhythm and they have soul. Okay, explain that.
Well, rhythm, without rhythm, there's no true, straight-ahead, unadulterated music. As same thing as, I say, a beat, a 1 and 2. I'm sorry, a 2 and 4. Same thing. When you're talking about soul, you're talking about really playing what you feel, unadulterated feeling, playing what you feel, so people can understand what you're conversing about, what the message that you're giving, where it comes from the heart. As same thing as you pray. It comes from the heart.
Yeah, from the heart. So that's a beautiful thing to talk about, that music comes from the heart. And I've been interviewing a remarkable person called Jessie Jones Jr., and he's a jazz musician, and he has so much to tell you about in his music. Now, Jessie, I like to leave the show on giving you the last word. So what would you like to tell our audience?
I would like to tell them that music, well, actually, I like to say this. I would hope and wish that the younger set will really get into the old school, and for the older musicians to really reach out and help the younger students in realizing and understanding true jazz, especially for our younger people coming up.
Yeah. And true jazz. Okay, just define that for us before we leave you.
When I'm saying true jazz, I mean jazz that can be understood, without, as some people say, they remind me of putting them to sleep. You know what I mean?
I don't know how anybody can really go to sleep with jazz, but what kind of jazz? You say they go to sleep. So, why would anybody go to sleep? Now, just let me say something. I happen to love jazz. I mean, there was no question about that. But there is some kind of jazz that, yes, is very repetitive, and it's very, how do I describe it? It doesn't make any sense. It's just some people playing very spontaneously, and the music is really out of sync, if you will. You're
talking about free jazz.
Yes, I am.
Very
very tough to listen to for me, but I know the musicians are really talented, and I hear those sounds that are just so interesting, but the problem is they don't make sense to me. It's almost like algebra or another language.
Well, I agree with you 100%. Because some of it I don't understand myself. I'm a type of musician. I'm not into the free jazz thing. I like the music that I can understand and people understand the message I'm getting over.
So how would you call your jazz? I mean, is it the old jazz? Is it what do you refer to as your kind of playing?
Well, talking about bebop. You're talking about the true American standard jazz book, or you're talking about even love jazz. I guess what you call it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love jazz. That's really amazing. Love jazz. Well, we're going to end on that note. So I want to say thank you, Jessie Jones, for being a great guest on the Susan Brender Show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Definitely my pleasure. I'm honored.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show.